Shalom from Yerushalayim. In our Parsha, Beshalach, we finally see the Jewish people, after over 200 years, coming out of Egypt, entering out Egypt, after the 10 plagues, and finally heading off into the desert to receive the Torah, the redemption. A beautiful process. But if we take a closer look at this process, we find a very interesting thing. Moshe Rabbeinu, comes to the Jewish people and tells them the tide of that the Jewish people will be redeemed. Redemption has come. One might think that here it is, we hear that redemption has come, God has decided to redeem the Jewish people, and from here on in everything will be beautiful. The ride home will be sweet. But we don't find that that's the case. As soon as he comes, Paro, king of Egypt, refuses to give them straw. It takes a downside. The beautiful redemption that they were promised, all of a sudden, conditions become much more harsher in Egypt. Much more hard. There's no straw for the Jewish people, but the amount of bricks that they made must be the same. And then comes once again an upswing, the 10 plagues. The Jewish people sit back, they watch the punishment handed down to the Egyptian, midah keneged midah, measure for measure, exactly as the Egyptians did to us, so too was given out to them. And finally, after the hardest plague, the death of the firstborn, the Jewish people are freed. And they wrap up their things, and they take out their bundles, and they pack up their valises, and they head home. One would figure that this is it. The redemption is here. The ride on the carpet back to Israel is going to be great. The long-awaited Mashiach is here, and from here on in, it will all be great and grander. Tikkun olam, the fixing of the world. The Jewish people leave Egypt, but sure enough, in our Parsha, they take a turn, and they head back to Egypt. Many of the people were hysterical. How can we go back to Egypt? We came from there. They panicked. On one side was the sea in front of them. In back of them, the Egyptians chasing them with their military might. And on the two sides, the Kadosh Baruch Hu had brought wild beasts and animals. So the Jews had nowhere to go. It was a very frightening experience. How could this be if this is the redemption process? But still, we have an upside. The sea split for the Jews. One of the greatest miracles occurred. The Jews entered into the sea to the other side, while the Egyptians who entered to chase after them, to destroy them, they themselves were destroyed. A tremendous miracle and tremendous happiness. Az Yashir Moshe B'nai Israel. The Jewish people sang praises to God because this was a great miracle to see the Egyptians, their enemies, drowned, and they were saved. But sure enough, not 3 days after this, there's no water for the Jews to drink. They're dying of thirst. They start complaining to Moshe. How could this possibly be, though? The long-awaited redemption? But things aren't so smooth, are they? We see that it's a roller coaster ride in reality. It has its ups and downs. Those of us today who are sitting around waiting, we're waiting for the redemption process, it's going to be great. They're sitting there, not really participating in the process, waiting for that knock on the door to come, and then head home. Doesn't seem that this is the way things really work out. The way that we see it in Egypt is the roller coaster ride of redemption. Ups and downs, turns back, forward again. So the Jews complain. There's no water, there's no food. Kadosh Baruch Hu brings down man. He brings down the manna from heaven. Now they have food, they have meat, they have everything they need. Once again they're dying of thirst and they complain before Moses. This is a long-going process. The Jews receive afterwards the Torah, as we'll see in next week's Parsha, and everything is looking great. Finally we're here, the final redemption. After the sin of the golden calf. Right away, the Jews sinned, they have the golden calf, and things aren't so good. And right after that is the decree that the Jews have to stay in the desert for 40 years and they're not entering the promised land. You know what, when they finally do enter the promised land, it's still not a gravy road. It's still not a great road. There's still ups and downs. For 400 years, the Jews lived in the land of Eretz Israel, conquering it, being conquered, fighting battles, until finally the time of King David and his son Solomon, where they built the temple. Finally, they see the light at the end of the tunnel, this long, long road. But we do see from here that this is not a very simple process. Also in the time of the Second Temple period, King Koresh gives permission for the Jewish people to return. He's not a Jewish person. But he gave permission, and so few Jews did return. And the process was very difficult. Ezra and Nehemiah came, they built the walls, they protected Jerusalem. It wasn't for some 20 years afterwards when finally the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, was finally built, the second temple. But that was also a very hard period of time. Also a roller coaster ride of redemption. Ups and downs, only 42,000 Jews returned in its time. Most of the leading rabbis and the business people, and the important people, they all stayed in Babylon, eventually assimilating throughout the ages, never to be heard from again. The hardcore, those 42,000 who came back and struggled here in Eretz Israel, they are the birth of the Jewish people as we see them today. But the process was long also, and it took many, many years. That seems to be the problem. What do we do with the redemption? So many of us are sitting around waiting for Mashiach ben David, not participating in the redemption process. Sitting around waiting for that knock to come, opening up the door. Hey, this is great. We're going to come back at a flying carpet. It's not the way it works. The redemption process, as has been proven throughout history, is a harsh process. Obviously, Ani Hashem be'itach Hishena, there are two paths. It could happen miraculously, speedily, but it has never happened that way. It's always been a natural process. The time has come for us to partake in this process. The more people who partake in the process, the sweeter the redemption is. The easier it is. The less difficulties and tragedies we have to go through. If one looked from the last 70, 80 years ago, when the Jews, most of their leading rabbis, did not want to come back to Eretz Israel. Today, if you look back over that time period, you see that today, most of the center of learning is in the land of Israel today. And almost the majority of the Jewish people are already in the land of Eretz Israel. So looking back over this process, which has not been an easy one, there's been tragedies, there's been military victories, there's been great miracles, but it's an up and down roller coaster process, the redemption. It's time for us not to wait anymore. There's going to be no knock on that door. We have to pack our own bags and buy our own ticket in order to get over here. That's the lesson from this parsha. That's the lesson that each of us should take home with us. Not to wait around. The process of redemption has its roller coaster ride, has its ups, has its turns, has its tragedies, but it continues to go. It's continuing going full force ahead. And eventually we will get there. We will reach the end of that tunnel. Shabbat Shalom from Yerushalayim. I'm Levi Chazan, Yeshivat Ra'yon HaYehudi.